Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam channel, where I talk about anything that is not new music. And you saw it correctly. I'm talking about sports. This is going to be a two-part video. The first part, I'm going to make a defense for baseball, explain to you why baseball, instead of getting older in its fan base, should be getting younger. How baseball is the ultimate Zoomer sport. Then I'm going to do the next in my series of Blank is a Good YouTuber and discuss the work of comedian tseanshannon and his baseball card theater, what I believe to be the most criminally underwatched comedic series on all of YouTube. So, this is like my favorite day of the year. It's August, I don't even know what day it is. It's April 7th, but it's my favorite day. It used to be my second favorite day. See, I love the spring. I don't hate bad weather, but one of the things I love about living in a place like Rochester is the winters just suck so much that when the spring comes, it's a very emotional feeling. It's a very emotionally rich feeling. So I love the spring. And that's sort of how I deal with the winter. Like, don't hate the winter, love the spring. So it used to be my favorite day of the year was daylight savings, when we would change the clocks, because that was the sign that it was getting lighter. But now that day doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to have to settle for today, which is opening day of baseball. Now, I'm not going to talk to you about a lot of the traditional things people discuss about when they say why baseball is so great. I'm not going to wax poetic about the fact that it starts in the spring and ends in the fall and is a pastoral game to America's roots. Other people have done that better than I have, and frankly, I'm a little bit tired of hearing it, even though I agree with it. If you have never heard George Carlin's Football versus Baseball, I will include a link to it up there. That is, I don't know, one of the best comedic sketches of all time that really does explain the difference between football and baseball. I'm talking about American football here. There's one thing you need to know, is that American football is much more popular than American baseball. But I want to make this argument that it shouldn't be that way. The median age of the average baseball fan is going up and up and up and up. But I don't think it should be that way. You see, baseball should speak to Zoomers. There's one thing I've been learning while I've been doing my music channel and video games and YouTube, is that one thing these young people like are vibes. Things that are chilled out. Have you ever watched a baseball game? There's 162 baseball games. Each one of them basically doesn't mean anything. It's not like football where every game has major consequence. The games have no timers. It's just chilled out, played in a field. It is a Yeet album, but like in sports. Everything's just so relaxed. Half the people jog wherever they're going. It is a vibe. And what if you're a Zoomer and you just want to be on your devices the whole time? That's fine, you're not going to miss anything. You can't watch hockey while scrolling on your phone the entire time. You want to do that while watching baseball, that's great. They throw a pitch, scroll, look around, look up. So you can either interact with it as a vibe and just watch it like I do. Like that's one of the most relaxed feelings I ever get, is watching a baseball game. Just listening to those people talk and just watching and relaxing and just kind of zoning out. Or I could be grading and checking my YouTube algorithms and all that stuff. Another thing that makes it a perfect Zoomer game is it's for the workers. It's one of the few worker-centric games that's out there. It's actually one of the least exploitative areas of entertainment. How? Well, first of all, we just had a strike, okay? Baseball strikes all the time because the workers have a good union, okay? I'm also going to give you a little sort of unofficial reading list. This is a great book about Curtis Flood, a great player for the St. Louis Cardinals, who basically is the reason that free agency exists in baseball. The ability to not be tied to a specific team. And baseball players have guaranteed contracts. That means even if they get injured, you still got to pay them. Okay? Full Detective Crashmore. Like, no matter what, they're getting their money. In football, most of the contracts aren't like that. So, you play this really violent game and you break your leg, sorry, you're just not going to get paid. Not to mention, the average salaries in baseball are 2 times the average salaries in football. And meanwhile, the rest of the sports that we're talking about, it's so rough on the athlete. You have a very minimal period of time to do what you can possibly do, and then your career's over. And if it's like football or hockey, you might have a brain injury. People are literally dying to bring you entertainment for football. They're literally dying. It is, now I watch football, but it's morally indefensible to watch football. But baseball? Let's think about the life of a baseball player. Sure, they play 162 games, but they travel. And then when they play, a baseball player can call timeout because they feel like it. They can be just sitting there and just go, whoa, 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 everyone stop. Everyone stop. Okay, go. I get it. You want to say, oh, it's so boring. Hockey doesn't have that. Football doesn't have that. European football doesn't have, soccer doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It's a standard thing in baseball where the people who are doing the job just say, I gotta chill for a second. You can be overweight and out of shape and be a baseball player. You can be old. One of the most interesting things is your skill set can change. You can start off doing one thing and then you can get too big or too old or get an injury and then do something else. That can't happen in any other sport where everything's so specialized. Think about a running back in football. They can't hurt their ankle and then become a left guard, right? There's just this great malleability to baseball. This great relaxedness, this vibe, which is what I think makes it such a transcendently wonderful sport. Now, before I get to my tseanshannon bit here, let me go through the rest of my reading list, okay? You'll see back here, fantasy baseball. That's also an activity that I enjoy very much. It's very useful if you have a kind of obsessive mind and you like thinking about outcomes and you like thinking about strategy without it mattering. That's really great. This is not a well-written book, but I tried to have my kids call me Poppy to be more like this guy. I'm from Boston, so that's why all the Red Sox stuff. Also, though, this is a great book about the 1986 New York Mets, which is as good of a book. You can't do better with stories of sex and drugs and celebrity. Of course, it has a terrible ending where they win the World Series, and I cried. Jackie Robinson's book is great. Let's also talk about the fact that it was baseball that really helped integration in professional sports, and I would say by extension, entertainment, and I would say by extension, America itself. One of the great civil rights heroes of all time is a baseball player. Here's my little reading list. Okay, now let's talk about tseanshannon. Tseanshannon has a YouTube channel that's just called tseanshannon. And he has a bunch of things on there. He has his stand-up, and stand-up is good. It's not amazing, but it's good. He used to be a writer for Saturday Night Live. If you've ever seen the Bear City sketches, kind of silly, kind of weird, he did that. So he has real connections to the comedy world, and you'll even hear Fred Willard does one of these videos. But he has this series, which he does maybe one a year, but he used to do one a month, called Baseball Card Theater. The premise is painfully simple. He just has a bunch of old, worthless baseball cards, okay? I used to collect baseball cards, so he has a whole bunch of them just sitting around in his house. And he looks at them, and then he films them, and then he comes up with jokes, comes up with narratives, comes up with, he has an entire one about players wearing jackets and how they wear them. A whole series of them called How's My Hair that makes fun of how people's hairs look in the pictures. A whole one on painted on hats. The whole thing is so simple, but his delivery is so dry and so funny, and each of these videos is 3 minutes long, and there's at least one sort of laugh out loud joke for every single one of them. And I don't know, I'm interested if it has the same effect on people who didn't grow up with these images, because he's showing mostly baseball cards from the 70s and 80s, and I collected these cards, and there are cards that are worth thousands of dollars, but the ones he's showing is all the ones that you just sort of forget. But I want to show you my favorite one. And this is, I think, his most popular video, and it's his best. It's called Not Cliff Johnson. I'll include a link to it up there. Cliff Johnson was this catcher who played on a whole bunch of different teams. Totally forgettable baseball player. Well, I imagine if I rooted for one of his teams, I would remember who he is. I remember Rich Gedman, But he does his whole video about how Cliff Johnson never smiles in his cards. And you just have to watch it. And it just has this narrative structure, and he sings a little bit, and it's just this beautiful, sweet, funny thing, just found humor that he's able to make funny. And if you are like me and you love baseball and you've never seen baseball card theater, really look into it. Sometimes he's not entirely PC, I will say that. So like, my recommendation is a little bit tainted by that. Like some of his jokes sound like somebody who was like a stand-up comedian in the 90s, so maybe a little insensitive on some kind of stereotypy stuff. Not the worst. Like I wouldn't say like full-on racist, but if you watch it, you might go, not. If you're still here and you're young, you might say, that's not it, Chief. Of course, saying Chief itself is problematic. So that's my review of Tseanshannon and my reasoning why baseball should be the Zoomer sport. I'm just going to have some food now. This is not a sponsor, but this is a thing that they have at my local Wegmans. That's what it's called. This is a Korean cookie. I can't even say the name of it because it's so funny. So I'm going to have a little bit of that. I'm going to look over the 1988 Red Sox, probably my favorite team. Lots of good guys on that team. Jim Rice, Ellis Burks, Todd Benzinger. God, I hate Tom Benzinger. Spike, Jody Reed. I saw Jody Reed, bases loaded, get into a double play against the Mariners. We'll never forgive Jody Reed for that. Okay, until next time, there's the camera.